let's get back to business. I'd like to invite some more people onto the stage, but first I'd like to welcome James Andrews, who's here with us. What's up, James? I'm so happy you made it.
Oh, this is awesome. I've been wanting to spend some time with you and Chris, and I'm just here as a student from the boss, the Chris Voss boss. Super, super excited. Thank you for all you guys do here. Chris, thank you so much for bringing all this to the to Clubhouse.
James, thanks for being on, man. It's always great being involved in a conversation that you're a part of. And, I appreciate your contribution. I appreciate how you're moving the world forward in your own way also.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Love it. All right, I'm going to turn hand raising back on, Chris. I know there are so many people who are here who are dying to ask you questions, and your answers help everyone, even when we don't have any personal connection to the question. Somehow, everything you say helps.
Have we heard from Rembrandt
Yeah,
yet? I mean, he's
Rembrandt.
lurking there.
Rem, are you
lurking
there?
on the side.
Rem, are you there? See that?
Do we have a stage squatter?
I can't believe this.
He's on permanent mute.
Oh my God. I'll have to
Somebody
text him
took him
about
hostage. Did Stephanie take him hostage? What happened to Stephanie? Stephanie's out there
Oh my God.
taking hostages.
Oh my God. I'll have to text. See, this is the thing, Chris. My intuition told me not to call on him, and as a woman, my intuition is a little stronger than yours.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, that's why I didn't call on him. But I appreciate the effort. All right, guys. I'm going to open hand raising. If you have a question for Chris, raise your hand. I'm going to invite a few people to the stage. I don't know how much energy Chris has tonight, but let's see.
I'm powered by 4 roses.
Oh my God. What does that mean?
Yeah, who gave you those roses?
Yeah, no, there's a great, ridiculously entertaining documentary called Neat. I recommend looking it up. I recommend watching it. It's beautifully filmed. It's a documentary on bourbon. And then sporadically, Steve Zahn, the actor, they have him pop in and just say this wacky shit in the middle of, he's in a tuxedo. He's saying it is one of the most entertaining documentaries, let alone if it's on bourbon. It's beautifully filmed, and the bourbon they talk about is 4 Roses, and I've been a fan ever since.
See, I thought you meant you were sponsored by The Bachelor.
Yeah,
and I got
that's
very
what I was
excited.
thinking.
I was like, Chris would be the perfect bachelor.
Give me roses. I'll take roses one way or the other. All right. Let's get
guys.
serious again. We're having too much fun here. Stop it.
Yeah, we're having way too much fun. All right, guys. I'm going to start with Sarah, who I think has a question. And then we're going to go in PTR order from there. What's up, Sarah?
Hi, Nicole. How are you? Hi, Chris. I didn't have a question. I was just back channeling with Ronan, and I'm a voice actor, and I absolutely adore you, Chris. I think you have probably helped so many more people than you even know. And I love what you have to say about tones of voice and mirroring and the playful kind of accommodator voice and the analyst and the late night DJ. That really works. It worked earlier. I heard you. So that's just my 2 cents. If you ever want to practice anything or just, show people what that might sound like, I'm here for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris, you know the FM radio DJ voice excites this audience. If you want to give it to them at any point, I mean, I'm not going to stop you.
Well, I would never want to blatantly do that.
Oh my God. How does it work, and when would you use it? I can ask that question.
All right, how it works is it actually triggers a neurochemical response in your brain. It has a calming influence on people, a slowing down influence. They taught us that. I learned it first on the suicide hotline, and then as a hostage negotiator. The mechanisms specifically are still in dispute because so much of the brain, exactly how the brain works. Like, for example, I used to say it was mirror neurons. I was triggering your mirror neurons, and it was causing an involuntary response, sort of the way the doctor, hits your knee with a little hammer, and there's a neurological response. And I mentioned Andrew Huberman. I love listening to Andrew's podcast. And I'm listening to him the other day, and he's going, I got news for all you people out there. There's no such thing as mirror neurons. Neuroscience has shown there's no mirror neurons. But then he says, but there is emotional resonance circuitry, and we don't know exactly what it is, but we know it works. And I'm like, all right, so the effect is the same. You just can't tell me how it works. But I know that, your emotional resonance circuitry, I can make you feel calm. I can make you feel my confidence. Calm is contagious. Also, if I smile, then I can trigger you to smile too. And that's going to have a different emotional effect on you. And then if I could put the two of them together, you can have some great conversations and have great interactions. I'm not threatening. I'm on your side. And it might do me good short term to threaten you, but it never does me good long term. So this is about long term relationships.
Jonathan, you're next. What's up? What's your question for Chris?
Thanks, Nicole. This is a fantastic room. I loved it last week as well. Chris, in your book, you talk about having a beginner's mind and taking a beginner's sort of discovery mindset as the core of empathy. From my lens as a doctor now, cardiologist for 20 years, we've got a real problem in our healthcare system. It's a crisis, I would say, of empathy and connection, and patients are feeling it. And my question is, how can we get doctors to a place of that curiosity and slowing down enough, even to have that radio voice when someone else is in distress, when the doctors themselves, about half of them, are stressed out through the roof, especially during COVID, not feeling safe themselves? How do you get to that place where they can really empathize and connect with patients so they can help them heal?
Yeah, and that's a hard thing because, doctors are really the emotional exposure for somebody in an emergency room or an oncologist. They're dealing with patients that are gonna die and struggling with how do they remain effective and stay on an even keel. And the real problem is you're not going to learn it you don't learn new skills in a high stress environment and without getting the training and the practice and the application in low stakes interactions. And doctors are required to know so much. I mean, the amount of information they're required to keep up on or be barbecued for not knowing it is overwhelming. I mean, I've seen doctors when my father was sick from cancer in the late 90s, and it was terminal. I mean, I watched very well-intentioned doctors acting like robots, and I knew that they were just protecting themselves emotionally. So it's a difficult and it's a hard thing. It's a lot to ask for somebody to exercise empathy for the first time when lives are on the line. And, how do we do it? The answer is obvious, but it's not going to be implemented. Training in medical school. Like, you go to medical school, as far as I know, there's no communication training at all, probably even as an elective. In business schools across the country, every business school I taught in, from Harvard to Georgetown to USC to MIT, communication classes are not required classes. Like, how insane is that? And it's for business school. Negotiation was an elective in every business school I taught to, an elective. And they know that people that are supposed to communicate should get training in it. So it's a big ask for doctors. It starts at the ground level. I've been involved in some training with different hospital corporations and hospital holding companies who are bringing negotiation training to their staff and to their doctors as much as they can. And God bless them for doing that. And they get the same types, same challenges, the same human failings that everybody else has, with, in many cases, much higher stakes. So, and there's no shortage of papers out there that say that doctors do a better job with empathy, and patients recover faster receiving empathy from doctors. It's just it's not raised high enough on the stuff they're judged on or penalized for to make them change.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Amazing. Rahul, what's up? What's your question?
Yeah, Nicole, thanks so much for having me on stage. And Chris, I'm a huge fan of you, and read your book, Never Split the Difference of Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It. So I really love that book, and so I want to give a
Thanks,
huge
man.
shout out. Yeah, you're welcome. And I want to give a huge shout out to everyone on stage and in the audience. And yeah, my question is, it's about saying no. So actually, I read one of your blogs, Communication Skills, the 3 ways to make no for you. So what would be the best piece of advice you would give someone like me who finds it hard to say no sometimes? And how can I build my confidence by saying no during the right time? So, yeah, that's my question. Thanks so much.
Yeah, well, great question. I mean, kind of like any word, there's two aspects. If you're saying it and if you're hearing it. But in every negotiator's life, there's a turning point. The biggest turning point is probably coming to grips with the words yes and no. And 1,000%, I remember the moment. It's about 2002. I'm walking through an airport, and I'm always looking at the books shelves, and I see a book on a bookshelf that says start with no. And I literally do a double take, stop me in my tracks. Like, start with no in the business negotiating section? This is nuts. I got to look at this book. And it was Jim Camp's book and he wasn't really trying to get people to say no, but it was about you being okay with hearing it. And then you being okay with letting the other side know it's cool to say no. And his whole approach, he called it the right to veto. He said at the beginning of the negotiation, say to the other side, it's okay, you can say no to me at any time. Say no, and this is over. You're free to say no whenever. And then Camp writes in his book that people will die to preserve their autonomy. And when you take away their right to say no, you take away their autonomy, and they'll die to preserve it. And I remember thinking, like, no shit. We learned that in hostage negotiation a long time ago. That's why we got hostage negotiators, because people are getting killed right and left over losing their autonomy over their home. So coming to grips with yes and no will move you forward as a communicator. Now, hearing it and saying it. My buddy in L.A., Ned Colletti, former GM of the Dodgers, great guy, good human being. I borrow this phrase from him. He said, I like to let out no a little at a time. Don't let the other side be shocked with the word no. How can you begin to hint that there's a no coming if they don't watch it? We start that out. I start that out in the book. I wrote the book, Never Split the Difference, with my son, Brandon, and Tal Raz. Brandon is uncredited co-author. We start with the number one way to let out no a little at a time, which is how am I supposed to do that? The other side's reaction gives you a clear picture of who you're dealing with and how collaborative they're going to be. You're not saying that to get an answer from them. You're saying that to begin to warn them that no is on its way. I never want anybody to be shocked when I flat out say no. I'll start out by saying, how am I supposed to do that? 1 time in 10, they're going to come back and say, that's up to you to figure out. If you want the deal, you got to do it my way. 1 time in 10. When that 1 time in 10 comes, my answer is, I'm sorry. You've been very generous. That just doesn't work for me. That's a little stronger way to say no. That hits a couple of more emotional levers from the other side. If I say, if a black swan says to you, I'm sorry, there's bad news on the way and we are warning you. We never let you get hit with bad news and then say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry is our precursor to us taking a stronger position and giving you a chance to brace yourself for hearing a tougher drawing of a line, a stronger boundary. I don't want you to run into the boundary and be shocked by it. I'm going to warn you it's coming. After I've warned you a couple times, if I need to say no, then I'm going to say no. And then I'm going to say, I look forward to the day when we work this out, because my intention from the beginning was for us to have a great long-term relationship. And when we're prepared to make mutually beneficial commitments, we can continue this conversation. And then it's peace out from my side. Now, know from the other side, you feel safe when you say no. You feel protected. If you feel safe and protected, you're more likely to collaborate with me freely because you feel safe and protected. So I'm going to say what we were talking about before earlier with Brienne. Have you given up on whatever it is? Do you disagree? Are you against? Is this a ridiculous idea? If I'm worried that you might react negatively, I just opened a very emotional negotiation tonight within my family on some very emotional issues in reference to my mother's recent passing. And I don't want anybody to feel like I'm intruding on their feelings or their autonomy. So I started out with, are you opposed to me wanting this? Because I want to know if they're opposed, and I want them to not feel guilty over their emotional feelings. So the best way for me to start that out is to start it out in that fashion. And that negotiation, which is meant to be collaborative in nature with nobody losing, has started out well.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Thanks so much for that answer, and yeah, I'd love to see if you'd be interested in coming maybe on one of my clubs. Love to interview you, but yeah, no, thanks so much. I'm really thankful to be on sharing this stage with you. And thanks so much to Nicole for bringing me up. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Rahul.
Nicole sponsors, organizes, creates great Clubhouse rooms. You got to follow Nicole on Clubhouse and beyond the interview on Instagram. It is some cool stuff.
How's my personal account, though? I'm just messing with you, Chris. I've been getting tips from doing this room, like money tips, and then I realized I was gonna ask you if you were getting any, and I realized there's no send money button on your profile.
Yeah, look, subscribe to the Black Swan Group's newsletter. Let us give you more than you will ever give us. Be a Black Swan, learn the Black Swan method. We got people doing crazy stuff. We got people that we've been coaching for years, because negotiation's a perishable skill, and they are at a high level of interaction, and nobody's losing based on their negotiation. So subscribe to the newsletter. It's free. And, get connected with the Black Swan Group. Listen to some of the other coaches that we have. We got some other interesting voices. We got Sandy Hine. We just brought her on. She's doing a lot of stuff specifically for women. She's talking very candidly about women's issues in negotiations. Say, I don't know if you remember the movie, what was it, Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer? Sandy was a police negotiator, and then she went taught high school in a very tough part of Virginia. She had to break up a fight between two females in a hallway once. One of the females, when she got in the middle of it and sorted it out, had an ankle bracelet, an electronic ankle bracelet on because she was on parole. She's wading into the middle of gangbangers, and they all respected her and they all loved her. And she's on our team now, and she's a no nonsense, here's how you get ahead type negotiator. I'm really proud of the fact she's on our team.
That's amazing, Chris. Let's move to Adam, our friend Adam Sokolich. What's up, Adam?
Hey, Nicole, thank you so much. And Chris, I completely agree with you. Nicole is truly amazing, and I feel so lucky to be here tonight with 1,700 people. And I'm thankful to have the opportunity to ask a question. So, quick reminder for everyone in the audience: follow Nicole, follow Chris, follow that greenhouse next to Beyond in the top left. If you want more of this incredible interviews and incredible insights. So, thank you, Nicole. And for Chris, a quick comment and then my question. The comment is I love what I've learned in your books, and specifically one is is it crazy to ask, or is it ridiculous? Is it a ridiculous
Yeah.
idea? It's worked for me over 9 out of 10 times. It's so powerful. So that's just amazing. Thank you for that one, Chris.
Good for you, man. Good for the trying it out and learning.
Yeah, and so my question is, often people reflect back, and I would love to ask, what advice do you have for your 20-year-old self? But rather, I'd like to spin it and see, you seem like a guy that's constantly learning, and what's the latest thing that you're learning about, or what's the thing that you want to learn about next?
Yeah, well, I'm really I'm soaking up everything I can about neuroscience, because then these guys, they start talking about emotions, they start talking about feelings, they start talking about how things actually work. There's a discussion of dopamine, which is the future-oriented chemical, anticipation or dread. Really control freak people are dopamine addicts because they're trying to control the future. And the difference is oxytocin is the here and now drug. My view, oxytocin wipes everything else out. So how do I trigger the bonding drug in the moment so that we collaborate, so that you're not so scared of the future? How do we make the present sufficient for you to move fearlessly into the future? So I'm into the neuroscience, the neurochemicals. Huberman happens to be one of the guys that I'm talking to a lot more, or following. I'm encouraging conversations with him. We got a project in the works. A gentleman named Nick Nanton we've begun a documentary, and the documentary on the Black Swan Group, Chris Voss, the Black Swan Method, really starts out about hostage negotiation into business, but we're going to risk getting into some of the law enforcement issues, because I don't know what percentage of the problems are between law enforcement and the minority communities are as a result of training versus racism. Two things can be true simultaneously. The problems can be as a result of race issues, and it can also be true that the problems are training issues. So I can help address the training stuff. I can help police understand that the wrong tone of voice, while well-intentioned, will inflame the situation. But I need the data and the science behind it to show it. And I'm hoping to get it from somebody like Andrew Huberman or any other neuroscientist that can help me show that the commanding voice that law enforcement is trained to use is counterproductive. You cannot blame them for following their training. If a frontline police officer is trained improperly, it's not his fault that his training is bad. So it goes much deeper. To me, it's police command versus police unions is what's leaving the frontline police officers to hang out to dry. And it's also true that there are police whose hearts are in the wrong place. In my view, what am I going to say? It's a minority. Let me address through this stuff, through neuroscience. So that's what I'm into these days. Let's start talking about what we can actually solve via training, via neuroscience, via empathy is a sneak attack on racism. Let me go in that route, and I need neuroscience to back it up. So that's why I'm much more into that. And that's not denying that there aren't other problems. Those things can both be true simultaneously.
Wow, incredible. Is that something that the world, like myself and everyone here and et cetera, would be able to learn and hear more about? Is it this summer? Is it later in the year? Is it next year? Any idea on timing?
Well, we're gonna probably, ideally, the documentary will be ready next year. I mean, we just started shooting. I just approached Andrew Huberman on this specific topic just recently. And the thing that I love about him is until he does the research. Like one of his podcasts the other day, he's talking about, look, everybody with a PhD behind their name is saying that intermittent fasting is good for you. I didn't want to say anything until I found the actual studies and the data. Now, he knew that intermittent fasting is good. And even as a recognized world expert on neuroscience and a PhD himself, he still wants to get the data that he's comfortable pointing to and the scientific research that backs it up before he says anything. So, that's why I want to get this guy on board, because I know we're going to be on solid ground. And thank you for your question. And again, I have to say, I am never happier than when I'm talking at length like I am right now. And thank you, Nicole. And follow Nicole. Follow her on Instagram. Find her personal Instagram. Follow her. She facilitates stuff like this on Clubhouse on a regular basis, and you are missing out if you're not following her personal account and beyond the interview.
Thank you, Chris. You're so sweet.
You're amazing, Nicole. We all love you.
Thank you, guys. Let's continue. My mind is constantly blown, even though, I host these rooms all the time, but every time I learn something new. Dr. Natalie, what's up? What's your question?
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Chris. Thanks for bringing me on stage. And, it really stands out from, you know, everything I've heard every time I come into this room, excuse me, Chris, is the power of the tone of your voice and the rhythm at which you speak. Being in this room, and I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling this way, it's like we're in one of those meditation rooms, and I think all our nervous systems are regulated and calm, and we can proceed into the world in a more peaceful way. So I really appreciate what you bring into the space, in addition to all the strategies. So I'll share my question.
Thank you.
I do a lot in conflict space as well. And one of the things that I'm stuck on is what happens when you're having a conversation with someone, it's a friend or it could be a colleague, and they go into this triggered space and they start to react in anger or go into some sort of rage. And what do you do in the moment as they're expressing this anger? And what's the first thing you say when they come out of the anger? And I'm asking this on behalf of being a participant in the conversation, as well as a bystander.
Well, I hate watching people go in downward spirals of rage. It's a toxin for them. It's poison for their system. It's a bad drug that they're addicted to, and it's going to leave them in a bad place. Now, I may not always be able to intervene. I mean, if I see somebody in a real rage, I'm going to gently try to intervene with my voice. Pretty much just like that. If they could see me, I might give some sort of body language. I might nod my head in agreement. I may look confused. Whatever I do, I want to make sure that I don't at least add anger into it, which is a really hard thing to do if they're venting at you. And sometimes people are venting at you, but they're not mad at you, but they sound like they are. So if I say anything, I might say, I've offended you. Well, no, it's not you that's offended me. The situation has offended me. Any thought pattern or emotional pattern interrupt that I can get in there without trying to hijack the conversation. I mean, people often go into downward spirals of rage because as soon as they be quiet, the other person counterattacks. People think that conversation is me just taking my turn to fire back. And they're afraid to stop talking. So, if I do some sort of emotional or thought pattern interrupt, then I'm going to go dead silent, because I don't want you to think I'm hijacking the conversation. I'm going to want you to feel like I'm interacting with you. Now, depending upon their level of frustration and, where their frustration and anger, where they feel it's being directed, that I may need to feel like I'm taking a beating. Gentleman that we've coached a lot that has a great feel for these skills in business negotiation, and I mentioned him in my TED Talk. I mentioned him with his permission, because he's at a family gathering, and his younger sister, who's a primary caregiver for their dying father, has had a little bit too much to drink, and she explodes at him, and she starts in on him, principally because of the stress and the pressure that she's under. Well, principally, exclusively, I'd be willing to say. And he says, I've seen this happen before, and I just realized it's my turn. And the entire time, all he did was make her feel heard. Now, in a suicide hotline, if I was on the phone for more than 20 minutes, I was doing it wrong, and it took too long. He was doing it right, and she launched on him for an hour before she ran out of gas and let up. And then she just ran out of gas. And it was over, but there was no apology. There was no that's right. There was no demonstrated understanding of relief from her in the moment. But the next day, she sent him an email that said, yesterday I attacked you, and you showed me nothing but love. Thank you for being my big brother. So when people are emotional, depending upon their perception of whether you simply are guilty by not participating in their defense, guilt by neutrality, or whatever it is, it may take a while for the battering to subside. But if all you do is make people feel heard, it will subside. And in many cases, based on the emotionality of their opinion of your position, it may take a little bit longer, but it will subside. And riding the storm out is often longer based on their perception of where you stand.
Thanks, Chris. So it's having the ability to just ride it out, knowing that it will come to an end, and doing what you need to do to soothe yourself while they're in that state. And hopefully they run out of gas quickly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, when people are angry, anger is a lack of feeling heard. And whatever you can do to contribute to their feeling heard will cause them to run out of gas sooner.
Chris, everything you say is so quotable. It's insane. And I forgot to show you this, but I went to the bookstore the other day, and not only were you in the section for top selling business books, you were in a section called highly quotable. I completely forgot to send that to you. I'll find it in PTR if I can, but just wanted to mention that. I hope I'm not pronouncing your name incorrectly. Is it Phanesia?
Good evening, Nicole. My name is Vanessa. It's so nice to virtually meet you.
Vanessa, so nice to meet you. Yeah, what's up? What's your question?
And that's an elegant name, too. Very cool.
It really is. It really is.
Thank you. My question, I just graduated from college, and I'm entering the workforce, and I'm entering an industry where people often, a lot of industries are like this, but they're really on the nose with this, where it's like, if you earn your way to the top, if you're at the bottom, it's like, okay, kid, takes out the cigar, that type of field. And I have a no abuse policy for my work life and my life in general.
Good for
but
you.
I also, it's not happening, Chris. Life is too short. But I essentially do not want. I want to find a balance between, being able to negotiate and get and get what I want in my day-to-day interactions. But I also don't know how to navigate when people want to feel comfortable by kind of bringing me down. I don't know how to explain this in a more eloquent way, but there's just this culture of like, you need to know your place, but I don't care about any of that. I just want to do what I can to get what I want. So I don't really care. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you think, and I hope that's clear.
Yeah, it is. I mean, first of all, the vast majority of companies are poorly run. What was it? I think in Daniel Coyle's book, The Culture Code, I think he threw out some stat to the equivalent of only 6% of corporate executives can actually recite the company's core values. So, and in point of fact, on a 10-year basis, 40% of the Fortune 500 goes the way of the dodo. You know, they become extinct. They get bought out because they're poorly run. So having an expectation that a company is going to be well run, the odds are telling us that they're not. So that means you're probably going to get some lousy treatment. Your no abuse rule is very good. The sooner that you move on to a well-run company, the better off you will be. What do you do in the meantime? Like one of my favorite negotiators, a buddy of mine from high school, is the head of an international bank. And the reason why I point out that we went to high school together is we're both from small town Iowa. He's got no family connections. He had no network to tap into. He went to a forgettable college in Missouri. He majored in partying pretty much the way that I did. What does that mean? He doesn't have an alumni network. I'm a Harvard grad. I didn't become a Harvard grad till after I got out of the FBI. You know, I didn't have any of that stuff. Neither did this guy. Every job interview he was ever in, every annual review he was ever in, he asked this question: how can I be guaranteed to be involved in projects that are critical to the strategic future of our organization? Game-changing question. As soon as the people around you perceive that you're out for everybody's strategic interests, they're less concerned about keeping you in your place, because you go from a threat, you know, the new kid who might be smarter than me, who might work harder than me, who might pass me by and make me look bad by comparison. You're a threat when you're new. You go from being a threat to somebody who's going to make their life better. And it's encouraging. Does that work with everybody? No, it does not. My buddy, as ridiculously successful as he's been, he was in companies that he got pushed out of because they were poorly run and there were people that were threatened by his presence, and people were drawn to him and wanted to work with him, and his superiors, the vast majority, but not all, wanted to promote him because they felt he was dedicated not to himself, but to everybody else's success. And that's a game-changing question. How do I make the world better for everybody around me? And they're a lot less interested in putting you in your place. Does that make it all go away? No, it doesn't. But it starts to tease out who your potential allies are and your collaborators are in the environment, and it gets a lot of people off of your back.
Thank you so much, Chris. That's very helpful.
Very helpful. And sorry, Chris, I was eating during this, so that's why I didn't unmute. But I did PTR, which is something that I haven't done in a very long time. And if you click on my photo, you will see that you were in the highly quotable section at Amazon Books.
I thought actually you were going to tell me I was in a dating section.
Yeah,
I mean, we're waiting for you to write a dating book, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, for the women that are smart, that are starting to catch on to it, you guys already realize it's a dating book. You're taking over the world anyway.
We're ready for it, Chris.
Yeah, we're all ready for it. And you don't even have to write a dating book, because I think Brienne's experience really showcased that Never Split the Difference is also a dating book as well.
Yep, it's a dating book.
It's a dating book. It's been helping her. I'm going to start using it. We're all, oh my God, Chris, you can be the honorary guest at all of our weddings. Do you want to
Yeah.
officiate?
You're going to have to write a speech, Chris.
That'd be interesting for me to conduct a wedding ceremony. I would be down for that. I would be happy to do that.
Oh
What
my
would your
God, that would be so cool. Wow. Okay. Yeah, wow, everything's coming together for me at once. Also, I'd like to welcome our friend Wendy Starland to the stage. Absolute powerhouse, discovered and developed Lady Gaga, a music entrepreneur. She was in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Just incredible. What's up, Wendy?
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate it. Well done, Chris. You're killing it as always.
Thank you very much. You're one of the biggest contributors to modern music these days. I mean, good Lord, what would the world without Lady Gaga look like? And if you hadn't discovered her, we'd be in a very different world than the one we're in.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
God, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine, but I mean, just so much more than that, Wendy. I saw you in the audience and had to invite you up. Just so honored that you're even here. All right, Giles, you're next.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Chris. Chris, it was great
Hey,
meeting
Giles, how
you.
are you?
I'm well, thank you. It was great meeting you the other week, and I loved your story about meeting Jack Welch and asking him to come speak at your class. I believe it was at SC. By
Yeah.
framing it in a no question. I want you to know I've been using that with my girlfriend. I've been using the "Would it be ridiculous?" or "Would I be out of line if I asked for this?" And I wanted to know if you had any other good no questions to ask that are really yes questions.
I don't, all of them. I mean, I don't ask any yes questions. I just know that people, it works better, it hits the brain better. So, is now a bad time to talk? Is it a ridiculous idea? Have you given up on? Is it a bad idea? Are you opposed? Do you disagree? I mean, with the slightest amount of practice, you could switch any yes question into a no question, and it just works. It works better across the board. I mean, nobody in my company asks yes questions. Nobody asks, have you got a few minutes to talk? Nobody says, do you agree? It just across the board, it makes it safer for people to answer. And also the real issue always is, if there are problems, I want you to feel free to tell me what the problems are. And you're going to feel free to tell me those problems after no. So with just a little bit of practice, and it takes practice, all of these are get your practice reps in the low stakes conversations, and pretty soon the stuff starts flowing out of your mouth. A couple of weeks ago, I'm making a pitch in a hotel for a room upgrade, and I don't got any room upgrades. But I've worked so much on no-oriented questions, and because I am pushing this guy hard for something extra that I'm not paying for. And finally, I says, well, is it ridiculous for you to make it up for me at the bar? And he's like, no. And he goes and gets a bunch of free drink coupons for the bar. So, no-oriented questions is a great one to practice. You'll find it'll bail you out when you're trying to get free drinks.
Love that. Thanks.
Thanks, Giles. Jessica, what's up? How are you? What's your question?
Thank you so much for hosting this room. I'm so excited to say hi to Chris. I took your master class. It was phenomenal. So I'm a big fan. But I wanted to ask you a question that I didn't see much of in the classes. So because of the pandemic, a lot of the negotiations for me and my business turned digital. And I came to the point where everyone was kind of asking me. I was trying to get them on the phone or the computer to practice those skills I learned in your class, because I feel I'm so much better, when they see my face. But everybody was kind of like, just email it to me. And I was like, oh, how do I do this? There's no late night DJ voice with nonverbal communications. Like, how do I do this digitally over email and still get the results that I want?
Yeah, well, you got to treat your emails like you're playing chess by email. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is if you were playing chess, you wouldn't put the next 7 chess moves in the same email. Email's got to be short and sweet. An email is designed to land one point. Now, if I got a negative point that I'm going to land, I will start out the email with, you're not going to like this. It's going to sound harsh. I'm going to warn people that something negative is coming. I'm going to then make my point. However I'm making my point, I will go back and probably sprinkle in, I'm sorry, I'm afraid, liberally preceding the points that they might be sensitive to. Then the real critical issue, besides working on landing one point, the last impression is a lasting impression. The last impression seeds what's going to come next. I will end my email how most people start their emails. Most people would start this email saying like, I think the world of you, things have gone really well in the past. We'd love to make a deal. I put that at the end. Cut and paste and put that at the end. The last impression is a lasting impression. It increases the likelihood that the next move will be made. So make your email short and sweet, land one point. If there's a negative point to be landed, start out by letting them know the bad news is coming. Land the point, finish positively. We negotiate via email all the time. A couple of years ago, I was extremely disappointed in a video product that we'd gotten. And my email to the individual that I was very upset with said, this is going to sound harsh. Every single thing that you've been delivered has been, I'm afraid it's been delivered in a standard that I'm sorry we cannot share it with anybody that we're trying to train. I'm asking myself, not only why should we not pay you for what you've delivered, but why I shouldn't demand all of my money back. My problem is, I think the world of you personally. Myself and my team, we've always enjoyed working with you. You're a decent human being, and I hope that 10 years from now we look back on a prosperous relationship. How do you want to proceed? Now, that part that I put at the end is what most people would have put at the beginning. But I let them know something really harsh was coming, and believe me, what followed was harsh. And I sprinkled in the I'm sorry's and I'm afraid's because I need it to land. I need him to hear me. And then I need him to know at the end, instead of finishing with what most people would have written, their last line would have been, I don't know why I'm not asking for all my money back. That's the way most people in those harsh emails. Last impression is a lasting impression. The words that I need to ring in his ears are, no matter what, I still value you as a human being. He emailed me back almost immediately offering to redo everything for free. And we worked it all out, and we treated him the entire way. Although we were disappointed in the product, we valued him as a human being, and we still have a good relationship.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That was so helpful. And I just have one other question that relates to that. So recently I pitched a premier platform for an art launch, and the response I got was very short, like, no, sorry, try again next year. Is there a way to negotiate backwards, I guess, after you receive that kind of no response?
So I'd probably start out with something short and sweet, which is, seems like you have a good reason for rejecting me. Now, you really need to know what's going on the other side. It could be a variety of things, not the least of which is whoever you have contact with has lost the ability to influence the outcome, and they're embarrassed to tell you that. So to get them to be candid with their answers, they have a good reason for saying that, and their empathy is about the other side's perspective. Your recognition you have a good reason for rejecting me is the best way for you to find out what's behind it so that then you can recalibrate. Maybe they're not even buying a product anymore. I mean, there's so many possibilities that are not linked to anything where there's a dissatisfaction with you personally. You've got to sort out if there's stuff that's external to the environment that just takes everything out of the game. So that's how I would start. An empathy statement, it seems like you have good reason for rejecting me, is the most likely way to get an answer, and that's how I would start. And then I would, however they respond, I would factor that into all of my moves forward from that point on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Our good friend Samantha Rostein. What is up, Samantha?
Hey, how are you guys all doing?
We're doing good.
Chris, I'm curious how things like neurodiversity affect your negotiations, or things like the ways that silence can be interpreted in different cultures or contexts.
That's a great question. And I love that you hit on silence to begin with, because that is one of the most misinterpreted dynamics in negotiations. And your question about culture is interesting, is because that I believe, and I think we've shown it, and I can point to plenty of examples. The underlying foundation for the Arab culture, for the African culture, for the Latin culture, for the Western European culture is the human culture. We're all wired pretty much the same. There's one DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, for the planet. There isn't a DSM for Africans and for Latins and for Asians. There's one DSM. Every human being on Earth is born with a limbic system, the emotional circuitry in the brain. If you don't think that people react emotionally pretty much the same globally, I would ask you, what countries is Facebook not an influence? Only the countries that ban it, because human beings on every part of the globe react to the emotional buttons in Facebook the same. And China or other countries who cannot control those emotional reactions, because we're all human beings, the only way they deal with it is banning it. So the neurodynamics of human culture is across the board is pretty much the same. Now, within those are three subgroups: fight, flight, make friends. Those were the caveman responses to threat, to conflict. Huberman's podcast recently, he talked about the amygdala as the fear center, or the threat perception center. We all have an amygdala. We all react in similar ways based on our amygdala. Fight, flight, or make friends. What does that have to do with your original question about silence? Silence in a negotiation. If you're a make friends type, if the cavemen that you're descended from survive by making friends, you signal fury by going silent. The worst thing you could do to somebody is give them the silent treatment. If you're from the cavemen who are highly analytical, silence is golden and is an opportunity to think. You're demonstrating respect for your counterpart by going silent, because you're thinking about what they said. You're taking the time to contemplate what they said. So imagine the misinterpretation of the dynamic of silence between those two. One person is going, oh my God, he's furious, she's furious, she's giving me the silent treatment. The other person is thinking like, oh, thank God they shut up, they're giving me a chance to think. So silence as a misinterpretation of the negotiation dynamic is probably the single biggest cause of impasse in negotiations. So there are misinterpretations of the same dynamic in a negotiation. I think we've got the data that shows that it's not Asian versus African. It's analytical versus relationship oriented, or the assertive. The assertive sees silence as an opportunity to speak. Oh, thank God they went silent. It gives me a chance to talk some more. So there are misinterpretations, but the cultures that we're talking about are the segments of the human culture versus, in my view, the ethnic cultures.
Thank you so much for that answer. And then in terms of neurodiversity, just the appreciation that, you know, we have expressed neurodiversity certainly within humans. Like the whole idea that people are on a spectrum is that there is a spectrum itself. And so have you encountered negotiating with anyone that we would classify perhaps as neurodiverse? Someone whose emotions that are harder to read? And how does that influence how you do your work?
I think so. Neurodiversity is not a term that I've gained a lot of familiarity with. So I'm gonna sort of take a wild guess at it and ask you to correct me where I'm wrong. What I look for is in patterns of behavior on the other side. I'm using the tactical empathy tools to pick up who you are as a human being. So, and I'm looking for patterns in how you react. So I would want to take into account your diversity from someone else. If you're on the spectrum or wherever, I think we're all on some sort of spectrum somehow. We just haven't defined it entirely. I'm going to want to dial into your patterns of behavior, what you look like when you're telling the truth, what you look like when you're apprehensive, what you look like when you're thinking. I'm going to really want to dial into who you are as a human being and then try to move forward from there. And ideally, I'm paying enough attention that I can pick up your distinctive differences in what I sense that you're discussing in terms of neurodiversity.
Beautiful. Thank you.